RD7 Mildenhall is the venue for round 7 of the 2017 Minibike British Championship, opening the penultimate race weekend of the campaign at the largest and most challenging venue of the season. A typically British summer provides a wet and deep track for the riders to negotiate. Even the pro riders won't have it easy. Before they take to the track for the first of 3 deciding motos, let's take a look at what happened in the championship support classes. Max Pridmore made a successful 4th appearance of the 2017 season with a 2nd overall win in the kids 50cc class. But despite enduring a challenging day, 2nd place was enough for Harry Lee to further extend his championship advantage. The series leader left himself up against it right from the first moto as, after missing the start, he fell attempting to recover. But a damage limitation ride saw him recapture 2nd position, aided by 2 falls for Ray Barrow, who finished 3rd. The pendulum swung back in favour of Harry Lee in the 2nd moto, Max Pridmore falling from the lead in the first sequence of corners on the opening lap. Now tied on points, the pair would be separated by the 3rd and final moto, and fittingly, this was the only race in which they really had the opportunity to go directly head-to-head. Max Pridmore made the fastest start, while Harry Lee was left to snake his way through the traffic around the first 2 turns and take up the challenge. Surging forward, Lee then completed his work with a move on Pridmore for a lead which he held for the best part of 3 laps, before Pridmore found a way back past to take his 2nd race victory and the overall win. Behind them, Ray Barrow secured 3rd position overall by getting the better of Ben Johnston for a 2nd race in 3 and a 4-point margin. With Ray Barrow a recent addition to the championship and Max Pridmore missing several of the 2017 rounds as well, Harry Lee's closest challengers at round 7 sit well adrift of him on the leaderboard. Despite missing out on a place on the podium, Ben Johnston continues to amass enough points to extend his advantage over the chasing pack from 2nd in the standings. 2 close contests in the points, separated by very little on track. 3rd position going the way of Ray Barrow over Ben Johnston, and Max Pridmore getting the better of series leader Harry Lee. In the youth 125cc category, Louis Dutton now has one hand on the trophy in the 12 to 14 age group, after securing his 2nd maximum of the season and opening his lead to 25 points in the series standings. Dutton was only headed all day by Senna A. Summers in the final race, Summers taking the 9 to 11 age group after a seesaw battle with Leo Vols. The top 4 positions in the first moto remained unchanged throughout the race, but behind them Summers was left fighting back through the order after a first lap fall that had left him 14th. He eventually recovered to 6th, but 2 places behind Vols, his early points advantage leaving him class leader going into the final race. Senna A. Summers, though, was the class of the field in the 3rd moto, taking not only the victory he needed to secure top spot in class, but also defeating all of the riders from the older age group. Louis Dutton finished 10 seconds back, but crucially with a significant margin in hand over 12 to 14 rival Ewan Goddard. With 2 victories out of 3 and Leo Vols taking points from Harry Streeter, Senna A. Summers opens a 40-point championship lead in the 9 to 11 category, only the tussle for 2nd position really closing in the 2nd half of the 2017 season. 4 rounds, Leo Vols has made up 6 points on Harry Streeter, the pair proving increasingly evenly matched, but still separated by 19 points with 3 rounds remaining. Meanwhile, in the 12 to 14 age group, Ewan Goddard seemingly has too much work to do in his battle with Louis Dutton, whose latest 9-point gain gives him a 25-point championship advantage. With James Lee gaining ground on the group behind him as well, 3rd position is also looking increasingly settled. The top 3 positions overall have been decided in exactly the same order for 5 successive rounds, James Lee taking 3rd behind Ewan Goddard and Louis Dutton. Elliot Gardner claimed his first victory of the season in the 110cc category, with championship leader Craig Rose in 3rd, behind debutant Nathan Marsden. With neither of his 2 closest rivals in the series standings able to outscore him, Rose extends his advantage at the top of the leaderboard to a massive 45 points with 3 rounds remaining. Rose got off to a strong start with the whole shot in the first moto, but he didn't have the pace to stay there. Nathan Marsden quickly set off in pursuit, but fell attempting to pass Elliot Gardner, and now able to focus on attack rather than defence Gardner made swift work of the early leader to install himself at the front. Meanwhile, Craig Rose was eventually relegated to fourth, with Marsden recovering through the field to second. Marsden won the second moto to become the day's new points leader, but a slow start to the third moto left him with too much work to do. With an eventual fifth position in the race, he could only claim second overall. Craig Rose seemed set to trigger a three-way tie for victory as the race leader for the majority of the contest, with Elliot Gardner having to find his way past Harry Titterell before challenging for top spot. But within sight of the checkered flag, Gardner found his way through for a second victory of the day, Rose holding on behind him to take third overall. Piers Skinner and Jack Titterell both put in subdued performances, enabling Craig Rose to defend his advantage despite finishing just third. Elliot Gardner needs to find some consistency if he's to close down the 21-point deficit to the championship podium. It's another highly competitive day of 110cc action. Elliot Gardner claiming victory in the final sequence of turns ahead of Nathan Marsden and Craig Rose. The second maximum score of the season for Ashley Gorman means the top two positions in the 140cc championship now look settled, but the fight for third was given further impetus after a second consecutive sub-40-point score for Taylor Hampshire, who looked ill at ease at Mildenhall. The best action in the opening moto was provided by Luke Humphrey and Troy Hayward, moving steadily through the field and into the top five. Hayward had the tougher task, stuck in the pack early on, but he recovered to within a position of Luke Humphrey in the second half of the race, eventually coming out on top in a battle with Scott Joyner for fifth. Joyner has gone steadily about his business this season, and with Hayward the only rider outside of the top two able to outscore him, he has again boosted his stock in pursuit of third in the table. Ashley Gorman proved his versatility with another victory in a wet second moto, again from start to finish. With Troy Hayward again directly behind Luke Humphrey, the more entertaining fight was away from the 140cc runners and between Masters leaders Dale Howard and Lee Mitchell. Howard had finished first in class in the opening race, moving to within 2 points of the championship leader in the process. He managed to find his way past Mitchell again on lap 3 of the second moto. With a fall and subsequent retirement in the third moto for Mitchell, not only did Howard claim overall victory in the Masters, but a handy advantage as the new series leader as well. And there can be no doubt that he was deserving after an excellent ride to get the better of 140cc leader Ashley Gorman, producing a race with at least 3 position changes up front before Howard took the checkered flag. Behind them, Luke Humphrey put in an excellent ride after stalling on the first lap and dropping out of the top 10, then recovering to third and crucially ahead of Troy Hayward, who had problems of his own. Hayward did eventually secure 16 points from the race, enough to take third overall behind Luke Humphrey and Ashley Gorman. Sealing the top 2 positions in each of the 3 motos, Gorman and Humphrey pull further clear from the rest of the chasing pack and look settled in their places at the top of the championship rankings. Troy Hayward continues to close from 8th in the standings with a third successive podium finish by outscoring the 5 riders directly ahead of him. With a 52-point championship lead and having never really looked troubled at round 7, Ashley Gorman is now a comfortable favourite for the 140cc class. 8 points had been the largest gap between the top 2 on any day in the Masters category, but with 31 drop points at round 7, Lee Mitchell may well have conceded the championship fight with one disastrous result. Leon Thomas makes his second podium appearance of the season ahead of Simon Bowles on his Masters debut. Lee Mitchell restricted to 5th in the day's scoring and main rival Dale Howard on top. Darren Griffiths finished first in class in both the second and third motos to return to top spot for the second time this season in the veteran category. Ending a 10-race unbeaten run for Christopher Rose, Griffiths moves to within striking distance of the 3 riders ahead of him in pursuit of the championship podium. A rare defeat and 6 drop points for Christopher Rose. Another successful day in the context of the championship, albeit behind round 7 winner Darren Griffiths. The the fourth different venue of the campaign for round 7 of the 2017 Minibike British Championship. The series currently led by Frank Van Homet on the number 1 bike with just a 2-point advantage now over Bradley Pocock. Van Homet sitting on 394. Bradley Pocock on the number 57 bike, separated by a couple of riders from him on the start line. He sits on 392. The only other rider in realistic contention overall this season, Blaine Blackwell. He sits on 358 points, with some work to do certainly over this weekend here in Mildenhall. Riders settling in then, waiting for the gate to drop as the first of 3 pro motos gets underway. A good start towards the inside from Bradley Pocock. He's got away ahead of Frank Van Homet. Watch for the sweep from the very outside from Blaine Blackwell. He gets the whole shot once again. Second place with Bradley Pocock. Straight up into 3rd position, Frank Van Homet. A good getaway there from David Lamb. He was another of the riders to have lined up towards the outside of the starting line, and he's made his way from the gate well, getting trapped in traffic further down the order. Dominic Foreman, not a good getaway at all for the rider who currently sits 6th in the championship standings. Frank Van Homet probing for a way back through down the inside of Bradley Pocock, but it is Pocock who comes in trailing by 2 points into this race, who at the moment is set to make up that points deficit as he sits in front of Frank Van Homet. But Pocock certainly going after the race lead, and it's Blaine Blackwell who holds it at present, and Van Homet looks closer to going backwards than he does progressing forwards as he struggles to hold on ahead of David Lamb, the rider 10th in the championship standings so far this season. Blaine Blackwell out in front, Bradley Pocock gaining. Additional momentum having run right up to the outside line. That's the only place at the circuit that isn't really quite so smooth, where plenty of track preparation has been undertaken to try and get a surface fit for these pro riders. At the end of the opening lap, it's Blaine Blackwell who leads the way, just half a second ahead of Bradley Pocock, with Frank Van Homet a second further in arrears, and David Lamb now starting to drop back. Dominic Foreman moving through up into 5th position. So next up for him is the attempt to challenge David Lamb, and the 4 race favourites do sit inside the top 5, as I think that's Kevin Nielsen who's gone down there on the exit of the hairpin, and that will have dropped him a series of positions. Nielsen sat in 6th place directly behind Dominic Foreman. He is back up and running again, but having come down. And meanwhile, we've got a change of positions for the lead. Bradley Pocock has managed to hit the front ahead of Blaine Blackwell, who's relegated to 2nd, and Frank Van Homet sits in 3rd. The front 3, as I said, breaking away now from David Lamb in 4th position, who is coming under assault from Dominic Foreman. Foreman, though, for the moment being held at bay, and this is a strong start to the efforts of David Lamb, who sits on 157 championship points. Contrast that with Frank Van Homet, the current series leader, on 394. He's going after Blaine Blackwell now. Bradley Pocock has already found a way past. How long will it take Frank Van Homet to join him up front and try and resume the rivalry for the top 2 places? With Pocock out in front, he is set to become the championship leader if he can stay where he is. So Frank Van Homet will be keen to do something about it. You can see just how deep it is for the riders when they go in around the outside line, as Frank Van Homet challenges on the inside of Blaine Blackwell, and through he comes to take 2nd position. So the answer is less than a lap after Bradley Pocock moves his way past the number 71 bike. Frank Van Homet does the same, and now it's a question of whether he can reel in that 3-second deficit. Pocock out in front then, a new fastest lap of the race, a 1:48.3 last time around, ahead of Frank Van Homet with a 1:50.3, but bear in mind that within that 2 seconds dropped to Bradley Pocock, he did have to find his way past Blaine Blackwell. This 3rd lap of the race will give us a clearer indication as to whether Van Homet does have the pace to live with Bradley Pocock, who is setting the timing sheets alight once again out in front. So Pocock, despite not quite making the start there over Blaine Blackwell, finding his way through for the race lead, and now it's Van Homet who has come through into 2nd place. Blaine Blackwell all too often has found himself first away from the gate, but unable to hold on to the top 2 positions against the might of Van Homet and Pocock, who are the 2 favourites for the championship in 2017. The momentum at the moment with Pocock, but we found consistency has all too often been lacking for him this season, and that's what he's got to try and find in the second half now of this 2017 campaign. It doesn't look as though Frank Van Homet has really been able to do too much about the advantage that Pocock has built up on the opening 2 laps. So it's Bradley Pocock leading, Frank Van Homet 2nd, still Blaine Blackwell in 3rd, well clear of David Lamb in 4th position, and Dominic Foreman in 5th. Hasn't had an answer to David Lamb, who, as I said, continues to lap well. Foreman a little bit faster last time around to the tune of a second or so, but still over a second back from David Lamb at the start of this lap. So it was an extremely quick break from David Lamb. Battles right the way through the order as Lamb now comes under pressure from Dominic Foreman, trying to come around the outside. Lamb has the inside line. Foreman then will have the momentum down this long straight here at Mildenhall, undulating towards the start-finish line. It looks to me as though coming through there is Dominic Foreman for 4th position. Just a fraction in it, but Foreman has found his way through for P4, and David Lamb's gone down. Lamb goes down on the hairpin, trying to recover that position, or certainly trying to keep on terms with Foreman, and that could cost him a series of positions as we see battles further back down the order. I think that's Kevin Doolan, who sits in 11th place, battling with Craig Newton and the recovering Kevin Nielsen, who sat as high as 6th before falling in the early stages of the race. In terms of the battle up front, no real changes. Another new fastest lap of the race from Bradley Pocock, a 1:47.5. Frank van Homert ups his pace as well, a 1:49.9, but it's over 5 seconds now, the gap between the top two, and it could just be a damage limitation exercise here for Frank van Homert, for whom 22 championship points are on offer for 2nd position. It would still mean that Pocock will leave this first Pro Moto as the new championship leader, but by just a single point over Frank van Homert after his efforts to get the better of Blaine Blackwell, who still sits in 3rd place. Dominic Foreman and David Lamb rounding out the top 5. As I said previously, separate battles further down the order. Russell Kilby, Jody Burton, Lewis Gillett, Joe Banks and Craig Newton rounding out the top 10 ahead of Kevin Doolan. But it's Bradley Pocock looking comfortable out in front. Frank van Homert with no answer so far, and as the timer ticks away, we're at the half-race distance now with no real sign of anyone stopping Bradley Pocock. Frank van Homert comes over the line with a new personal best, a 1:48.7, now lapping on the same pace as Bradley Pocock. He's got to find something special if he wants to reel in that 6-second deficit. Blaine Blackwell in turn 6 seconds further back as we see a fight further down the order. So that's got to be Jody Burton now trying to find his way through into 6th position. He's blocked out for the moment by Russell Kilby. So Kilby holding on, but Burton was a second faster on lap number 3, and it looks as though he's faster on lap 4 as well. David Lamb dropping down to 7th position, so that must be the fall earlier on, and the fall out after that, a 2:12 on that previous lap with the fall. So it's actually after 5th position that we're seeing this battle between Russell Kilby and Jody Burton now, with David Lamb having dropped behind them. Kevin Doolan moving up into the top 10 at the expense in the end of Craig Newton. So we've got the tussle for 5th, 6th and 7th positions, and the ongoing tussle for 10th and 11th places, but there's no sign of real action up front, with Bradley Pocock leading by over 5 seconds ahead of Frank van Homert, who, as I said, was fractionally slower than Pocock last lap around, despite setting a new personal best. New personal best as well from Blaine Blackwell, but he's being reeled in slightly by Dominic Foreman. There's 7 seconds between them as well, though, so we're now at the stage where the top 4 riders are separated by 20 seconds. And then that squabble further back between Russell Kilby and Jody Burton. It looked as though Burton had the pace last time around, so it shouldn't be long before he finds his way through into the top 5. It's just a question of how long he'll be held up behind Russell Kilby and whether that enables David Lamb to come back through the positions. Bradley Pocock with a 1:48.5 last time around, a 1:48.4 for Frank van Homert. They're circulating at similar pace. Still over 5.5 seconds between Bradley Pocock and Frank van Homert up front. What's happened to Blaine Blackwell? Dominic Foreman has come over the line in 3rd position. He's working his way through the opening sequence of turns. Blackwell then comes over the line having set a 2:08 and dropping suddenly 10 seconds behind Dominic Foreman as David Lamb weaves his way towards the finish line once again. He's looking far from comfortable in the latter stages of this race, a 1:59.2, dropping back from Jody Burton and Russell Kilby as they come through under the tunnel and over towards the completion of the early part of this lap. Further back, that's Kevin Doolan just coming over the start-finish line. And Frank van Homert. Frank van Homert has stopped. He's pulling his goggles off. Is that game over for the reigning champion? He sat up in 2nd position at the completion of 5 laps, and van Homert looking dejected on the racing line in the infield section here at Mildenhall. He stands up on the bank, frustration being shown by the Dutchman, And well, there can be no doubt about that then. That must be a terminal issue for Frank van Homert. Dominic Foreman released up into second place. It will promote Blaine Blackwell back up to third, but it's Foreman who is benefiting to the greatest extent. He's already moved past Blaine Blackwell, who must have suffered a fall or similar on the previous lap, and now he's got the better of Frank van Homert. Van Homert then just waiting for this race to end, and with the bike stranded at the side of the circuit. What a disaster for Frank van Homert as we see his name dropping through the time charts. He's going to drop well and truly out of contention, even if he does manage to get that bike going, which I suggest is quite unlikely since he's pulled off his goggles and looks in a dejected fashion to be retiring from this race. David Lamb then will be the next rider over the finish line to complete lap number 6. He sits in 6th position. Bradley Pocock leading the way. Dominic Foreman in second place. Blaine Blackwell is back to his fastest pace again, a 150.7, so he's reeled in almost 2 seconds on Dominic Foreman, and I suspect that that's where the closest race will be in the remainder of the dwindling time in this first Pro Moto, as Blaine Blackwell tries to close back in on Dominic Foreman. 8 seconds is the gap between second and third positions, but there's certainly no stopping Bradley Pocock. And as I said, time ticking for his rivals. This is going to be a massive gain in championship terms. He was only set to move 1 point in front as Blaine Blackwell is out of the action as well. Blackwell out of the race. This is absolutely unbelievable. We lost one of the top 3 runners, Frank van Homert, and now it's Blaine Blackwell, gloves off, pushing the machine towards the finish line, who is out of the race, certainly as a contest. Bradley Pocock still leading the way, but he is going to have a massive advantage here. And Dominic Foreman has pulled up somewhere around the circuit as well. Foreman yet to clock up a completion of lap number 7, so Foreman out in the latter stages of that previous lap. And so 3 of the top 4 in terms of favourites for the championship in 2017 are out of this race. It's turning into wacky races. We've got Frank van Homert back up and running again, but he's already more than a lap down. He's well out of contention in terms of major point scoring positions here. It's a damage limitation exercise for him clearly as he comes into the final lap, while Bradley Pocock makes his way towards the checkered flag. What a crucial victory this is going to be in terms of the series standings. He came into the first Pro Moto here at round 7, 2 points in arrears of Frank van Homert. He's going to leave it 23 points up. A race of attrition is won by Bradley Pocock on one wheel. Jody Burton will come through to take second position ahead of Russell Kilby. David Lamb will rue earlier misfortune and his big fall on the hairpin, because that's cost him a place in the top 3. He'll come over the line in 4th position. But in terms of the favourites, dropping a lap back, Dominic Foreman, Blaine Blackwell and Frank van Homert, all in the second half of the race. Their bikes just giving up. A technically demanding circuit, particularly in wet weather, but it's Bradley Pocock who survives the chaos to take the 25 championship points and the win in the first Pro Moto. Could be in for a very unusual looking podium here at Mildenhall as Bradley Pocock took victory first time out in what turned out to be a race of attrition, with 3 of the top 6 in the championship standings retiring as the race went on. Jody Burton and Russell Kilby sitting inside the top 3 in the day standings behind Pocock, who becomes the new championship leader by a margin of over 20 points now ahead of Frank van Homert, who desperately needs to find his starting gloves as the riders wait for the gate to drop again. He's been out-trapped by Bradley Pocock. It's another good jump from David Lamb. It's Blaine Blackwell, though, from the outside start position who gets there first, and Lamb then skates a little bit wide and ends up dropping a couple of positions. He's still well and truly up among the front runners in the second Pro Moto, having finished in 4th place first time out. I think he sits down in 6th position here. It's Blaine Blackwell who leads the way. Bradley Pocock immediately challenging him in second, and Frank van Homert trying to take advantage of that by diving down the inside. Pocock goes up to the outside. Blaine Blackwell going the shortest way around, but Pocock has the momentum through the infield section here at Mildenhall, and he's chasing after the early race leader. Blackwell was passed in succession by Bradley Pocock and then Frank van Homert in the opening race before both van Homert and Blackwell ended up retiring. And Frank van Homert will be desperately keen to stay with Bradley Pocock here, so that if he does find his way swiftly past Blaine Blackwell, van Homert will be able to follow. David Lamb has moved up into 4th position. Dominic Foreman now sitting in P5, and Jody Burton up there and challenging as well after his 2nd place finish first time out. Blaine Blackwell under severe pressure here now from Bradley Pocock. It took him longer than a lap first time out, but it might not take him till the end of this one, although he doesn't really get great traction coming off the final turn of the lap, and so it is Blaine Blackwell who will lead at the end of lap 1. Bradley Pocock a 2nd in arrears, Frank van Homert a 2nd further back. It's 2 seconds then separating the top 3, with Dominic Foreman dropping away by almost 5 seconds from the top 3, having had to battle his way past David Lamb at the end of the opening lap. Lamb sitting in 5th position ahead of Jody Burton, Kevin Doolan, Andrew Luke, Adam Frierson and Craig Newton, who round out the top 10. A big gap then between 3rd and 4th positions. Frank van Homert to Dominic Foreman, and then David Lamb and Jody Burton in quick succession. It looks as though we've got 2 races in one. We've got the battle up front between Blaine Blackwell and Bradley Pocock at the moment, with Frank van Homert seemingly unable to maintain the pace of the lead duo as Pocock goes diving around the outside line. Blackwell again with the shortest route around. Pocock then will look to the outside once again, perhaps. He does indeed, dives wide. Again, Blackwell maintaining the inside, but it's Pocock who's building up his momentum nicely. Blackwell briefly on one wheel. Pocock comes soaring around the outside and makes the pass. Blackwell tries to keep his front wheel in, but it's Pocock who's already moved ahead and then cuts across the front of Blaine Blackwell to become the new race leader. So for a 2nd time here today at Mildenhall, Bradley Pocock has managed to find a way past Blaine Blackwell to lead. Now can he do, as he did in the first moto, build up a gap to the rest of the pack, so that even if Frank van Homert does find his way past Blaine Blackwell for 2nd, it'll be too late to try and strike for the race lead, and Bradley Pocock will further extend his championship margin. At the moment he's set to add 5 points to that tally out in front. He already leads Frank van Homert by 23 points, remember, so he'll have a moto in hand essentially over Frank van Homert if things stay as they are here. The end of lap 2, Bradley Pocock leads by 1.3 seconds, a 1:44.2, a 1:46.7 for Blaine Blackwell, who's lapping at a similar pace at the moment to Frank van Homert, and actually Dominic Foreman in 4th place, faster than both of the riders, directly ahead of him, but 4.5 seconds in arrears of both van Homert and Blaine Blackwell. David Lamb still holding off the attentions of Jody Burton, but there's pretty much nothing in it for 5th position, and that's the 2nd battle on track that I was talking about when I said there are 2 races in one. A clear tussle for 1st position and a squabble for 5th and 6th places as well. Still Andrew Luke sitting inside the top 10 with Adam Frierson, Kevin Doolan and Russell Kilby now making his way back through. And riders like Russell are key in terms of the podium overall here today, because he finished 3rd place first time out. So if those riders who were surprise entries into the top 3 in the opening moto can maintain good scoring in their remaining 2 outings, even if they don't beat favourites such as Blackwell and van Homert, who suffered mechanical problems first time out, they can make it on to the podium just thanks to their consistency. As we see Frank van Homert trying to recover points here, he's right on the tail of Blaine Blackwell. He thought about a move down the inside but couldn't quite make it. And it's still Bradley Pocock accelerating away, but Frank van Homert is showing improved pace now. It looked for the opening 2 laps as though Blaine Blackwell comfortably had the measure of the Dutchman, but it is the reigning champion who is now on the march. He looks up to the outside line, he's making lines already on Blaine Blackwell. He's going to build it up wide around the final turn, because that's going to give him the momentum down the home straight, and we'll see if he can reel in Blaine Blackwell by the time they get into turn number 1 on lap 4. Pocock with a new fastest lap of the race, an incredible 1:44.1. The track is coming to the riders quite nicely as the day develops here in Mildenhall. Blaine Blackwell narrowly ahead of Frank van Homert. It was less than a second for the first time over the line at the end of lap number 3. Still Dominic Foreman in 4th position. David Lamb has now dropped behind Jody Burton, who moves up into 5th place. Kevin Doolan also dropping a place on that previous lap, but the race lead looks more or less settled here, as he did in the first Pro Moto. Bradley Pocock has managed to assert himself up front with a 5-second lead as Frank van Homet tries to lunge for the inside on Blaine Blackwell. Will Blackwell cover the inside line again? Yes, he will. That's going to enable Frank van Homet to build it up wide, but can he carry his momentum? There aren't too many opportunities to send a move down the inside. It's about building it up on one of the long rhythm sections to find a way through. This is some of the tallest structures of the 2017 season, some of the biggest jumps, the most technical circuit of the year, no doubt about that. So there are plenty of opportunities to build pace, build speed, but at the moment Frank van Homet is being held at bay by Blaine Blackwell, and Dominic Foreman is coming at the pair of them. It's quite clear on this lap that Foreman has gained, and we'll see if he can continue to do so. It's been consistency that he has lacked so far in this second Pro Moto. Another new fastest lap of the race for Bradley Pocock. This is incredible pace as we come towards the half race distance. Pocock with a 1:43.2, Blaine Blackwell with a 1:48.5. 5 seconds slower than Bradley Pocock on that previous lap. I did say that it looked as though Foreman was gaining on both of the riders ahead of him. A 1:49.2 for Frank van Homet. Well, Dominic Foreman running in the 1:46s on that previous lap. So Dominic Foreman now just 3 seconds back from Frank van Homet, who's got to strike rapidly here on Blaine Blackwell. Otherwise, he's going to come under pressure from behind from the fast-closing Dominic Foreman. Van Homet losing his footing there, just standing it up, going through on towards the infield section as he chases down Blaine Blackwell. This is the closest he's been so far. He's got his front wheel in front of Blaine Blackwell's back wheel, but he can't quite find a way past. Blackwell, though, ends up on the outside line, and I think misjudged that turn. He ended up wider than he wanted to be. Van Homet was already alongside him, and Dominic Foreman has followed him past. Foreman, though, carrying his momentum up to the outside line. Blaine Blackwell has favoured the inside on that hairpin. He couldn't quite get back alongside, and that's an excellent recovery ride from Dominic Foreman. But since as Foreman loses the position again, Blackwell diving for the inside just forces his way back past as the pair negotiate one of the lapped runners further down the order. Second, third and fourth positions then closely packed together. It's been an excellent ride here from Dominic Foreman over the last couple of laps. He's reeled in the two riders directly ahead of him. He hasn't really been able to take advantage of it, though, because it's still Blaine Blackwell who is holding diligently on to third position. Bradley Pocock emerging out front ahead of Blaine Blackwell, Frank van Homet and Dominic Foreman. Here's the move again from Frank van Homet down the inside of Blackwell, who knows he's there, looks over his shoulder, can't get it turned in time. Foreman comes through as well. Blackwell then cutting his way back past down the inside later on in the lap to recover his third position. So Bradley Pocock leads, Frank van Homet second, still under a great deal of pressure from Blaine Blackwell, who is, as usual, favouring the inside line, while Van Homet and Foreman either side of him try to build up the momentum wide around the outside line. Pocock is negotiating lap traffic. He's got to be careful here because he's setting absolutely incredible lap times, far faster than anyone else. But we saw that the first Pro Moto ended up being a race of attrition, and he won't want to wear out any mechanical parts there that might be flagging as this race goes on in tough circumstances here in Mildenhall. It's been a wet weekend already, and hopefully we won't get any more rain in the remainder of the event, but that looks highly unlikely as the dark clouds loom over this Mildenhall motocross circuit. Frank van Homet dropping back once again on this lap number 6, and he will be desperate to avoid any of the issues that have blighted him so far this weekend, but he's dropped down to fourth position. I don't know what happened there because we were focusing on Bradley Pocock and his margin out in front. 19 seconds, absolutely incredible, but somehow Blaine Blackwell and Dominic Foreman have both managed to find a way past Frank van Homet, so hopefully that's not a recurrence of his mechanical issues, but it looks like it might be because he's dropping back behind lap runners. He's already passed, and there is the symbol and the signal that he is frustrated once again as he takes off his goggles in a fury, coming over the bridge and over the tunnel in fourth position still, with Jody Burton 30 seconds back. So we have seen Frank van Homet on a couple of occasions previously at Champs Park in Kettering managed to bring the bike home when he had a front puncture and just simply fight the bike around the circuit to maintain a point scoring position. He wasn't able to do that in the first Pro Moto. Will he be able to do it in the second? Dominic Foreman finding his way past Blaine Blackwell on this lap. So another good ride from Dominic Foreman. I said previously he battled his way past Blaine Blackwell well, he's had to do the work on a couple of occasions. We're coming into the final lap. It's all change again on the penultimate lap. Frank van Homet trickling around the circuit. He's looking over his shoulder. Will he be able to get to the completion of this race? Well, it's not looking too good for him at the moment, as I insist that he is well adrift of normal race pace. The top three have already crossed the line to start their final lap, so it might be that Van Homet needs to allow himself to be lapped here by Bradley Pocock and then come over the finish line. He'd be a lap down, but he would still be hovering somewhere in the point scoring positions, which wasn't the case first time out. Foreman, Blackwell and Van Homet, who all sat in the top four positions at the end of lap number 6, all retired first time out. So it's going to be back in the scoring for both Dominic Foreman and Blaine Blackwell here. Jody Burton has got the better of Frank Van Homet, so he should move through into 4th position. That's going to be more good scoring for him. He'll move on to 40 points from 2 rides. But it looks though Bradley Pocock is going to make it a victory here in Mildenhall, as long as he can come up with a point-scoring finish in the 3rd moto, which is far from a given, actually, on the basis of what we've seen so far here today. Race number 2 has been a little bit calmer than the opening race, where the riders were dropping like flies, and all of the favourites, aside from Bradley Pocock, ended up out of contention. But in race number 2, it's going to be Bradley Pocock home once again with a massive victory margin, this time to 2 of the other championship contenders from the early stages of the season. Pocock wins it, over 20 seconds clear of Dominic Foreman and Blaine Blackwell. What an excellent battle it's been between those two throughout the race. They finish in 2nd and 3rd positions, Foreman ahead of Blackwell. It's going to be an important result there for Foreman after non-scoring first time out, likewise for Blackwell, and a frustrating result for Frank Van Homet, who once again finds himself outside of the top 10 and outside of the lead lap finishers. So after 2 races, Frank Van Homet dropping back through the point standings in terms of the championship. Bradley Pocock sitting out in front on 50 points out of a possible 50. His nearest challenger on the day, Jody Burton, but his championship rivals dropping like flies in the opening 2 motos. Two retirements from the rider who led the championship coming into round 7 have given a 50-point swing to Bradley Pocock, the new championship leader, who also sits 10 points clear in the overall standings here at round number 7. We're lining up for the 3rd and deciding moto, where the overall results for this event itself will also potentially be a little bit unusual. Jody Burton, Russell Kilby and David Lamb, the nearest challengers to Bradley Pocock in the standings, with Dominic Foreman and Blaine Blackwell managing just a single finish, 22 and 21 points respectively. Foreman sitting in 10th and Blackwell in 12th. We're underway with the 3rd race of the day then. Pocock with a decent start. Frank Van Homet, though, has got away better, and it's Blaine Blackwell from the very outside who gets the whole shot once again. Pocock stuck behind Jody Burton, who weaved left and right coming off the first turn and ended up accidentally holding up Pocock, who has now managed to find his way through, but only up into 5th position with 2 riders to clear before he can try and challenge Frank Van Homet. He moves through now on the inside for P4. Van Homet sits in 2nd place. He's already eyeing up a move on Blaine Blackwell, the early race leader, and once again the fastest starter. Good start as well for David Lamb. He's been consistent from the gates here at round number 7, and that stands him in good stead for taking a place in the overall podium here today. At the moment up in 3rd position. Even if he drops behind Bradley Pocock, which you would expect to be the case, he would still crucially be ahead of Russell Kilby, who is the rider he needs to beat in this 3rd moto. Lamb still under pressure, but still holding on resolutely against the attentions of Bradley Pocock, who you would expect to have the pace to try and gain in on the top 2 on the evidence of what we've seen so far. A dominant 50-second victory first time out and a significant 20-second win over 2 of his main championship rivals last time out in the 2nd Pro Moto as well. 1.5 seconds between the top 2, Blaine Blackwell and Frank Van Homet. Bradley Pocock, while he was working his way through traffic, conceding 3 seconds on that opening lap, but I suspect that's already starting to be minimised. Dominic Foreman up to 4th position, having passed David Lamb down into the opening turns of lap number 2. Lamb then dropping 2 places and down into 5th position, but still more or less where he needs to be in terms of the overall for today's event. He's not among the challengers for the championship, down in 10th in the standings coming into round 7 here in Mildenhall, but he could earn himself a successful day with a place among the top 3 thanks to the surprising results of the opening moto. Blaine Blackwell set to redress the balance in terms of his own scoring. He was beaten by Dominic Foreman last time out. Foreman sitting down in 4th position. The top 2 have managed to break away, but there's no doubt about it. Bradley Pocock is gaining on them. He's coming for them from 3rd position, from 3 seconds in arrears at the end of the previous lap to a lot less than that now, and he cuts his way down the inside of Frank van Homert on the infield section here in Mildenhall and through into 2nd position. Blaine Blackwell, the race leader. It looked to me as though Frank van Homert was caught a little bit unawares there. He went up to the outside line trying to build up his momentum to chase down Blackwell, left himself exposed to Pocock, and it's Frank van Homert who's now got quite a significant margin actually to make up on the top 2. Pocock deeper over the jumps. He's already eyeing up a move on Blaine Blackwell on the back wheel as he comes down towards the first turn and comes soaring around the outside to take up the race lead. A new fastest lap of the race from Bradley Pocock, a 1:41.6 compared to a 1:45.9 from Blaine Blackwell. 4 seconds made up in 1 lap. That is absolutely astonishing. And there's no doubt about who the favourite is to win this one now. Bradley Pocock having hit the front. Each time he has held the race lead here in Mildenhall, he's been able to open up bigger and bigger margins as the race has gone on. Frank van Homert now moving his way through into 2nd position, so Blaine Blackwell struggling quite clearly for pace and actually looks set to be picked off here by Dominic Foreman. Foreman does indeed come through for 3rd position, so I wonder if there might be an issue for Blaine Blackwell, who has suddenly lost pace, although he's recovering now down the inside of Dominic Foreman, who's favoured the wide run, building up his speed on that hairpin throughout this weekend so far, but has just exposed himself to attack from Blaine Blackwell. These 2 in 3rd and 4th positions in this 3rd moto have tussled over positions in each of the races so far here in West Row, and at the moment it's Blaine Blackwell holding on down the inside line. Foreman looking wider but can't find a way through. It's Blaine Blackwell then who has dropped from 1st down to 3rd and now under siege from Dominic Foreman trying to find a way through. Frank van Homert moving up into 2nd position at the expense of Blackwell, who just inexplicably lost pace over the course of 2 laps there and now has a lot of work to do in the remainder of this race if he wants to make it back into the top 2 positions, which seems now to be unlikely. Blackwell 6.5 seconds back from Bradley Pocock. Frank van Homert in turn almost 3 seconds ahead of Blackwell, so the top 3 spreading out, and the closest race is over 3rd and 4th positions. Foreman significantly faster, almost 3 seconds faster than Blaine Blackwell on that previous lap, but well adrift of the lead duo. This tussle is going on for 3rd position. Foreman now right nose to tail with Blaine Blackwell in the struggle for 3rd position. Incidentally, David Lamb has dropped down to 6th position. Jody Burton coming through. So Burton recovering positions. This would be good enough for him to take 2nd position in the overall for round number 7. And David Lamb is still in line for a place on the podium ahead of Russell Kilby. He will be in the point standings if he can stay ahead of him in the race as well. They are line astern now, 5th, 6th and 7th positions. The 3 riders duelling over 2nd and 3rd places in today's overall. Dominic Foreman and Blaine Blackwell would realistically need a top 2 finish if they were to emerge into the top 3 in this round, but in terms of the championship points, it's still crucial that they continue to amass major tallies, and they're certainly set to do so in 3rd and 4th positions here. There is Jody Burton sitting in 5th position and in line for a podium finish. It'll be a rare appearance on the podium. The top 3 places have largely been locked out in 2017 between Van Homert, Pocock, Blackwell, and earlier in the season Kiergaard and Foreman as well. Dominic Foreman has been a little bit inconsistent in 2017, but he's on for a good finish in this one. At the moment it's 4th place, but he's still trying to work on the tail of Blaine Blackwell to find a way through. Frank van Homert, meanwhile, comes over the line with a new personal best, but Bradley Pocock running in the 1:42s. So Frank van Homert sitting in the 1:44s. Obviously can't reel in any ground on Bradley Pocock and now drifts to 6 seconds in arrears. Pocock in front, Van Homert in 2nd. Dominic Foreman still in 3rd position with Blaine Blackwell in 4th place, and it looks as though Foreman is set for a podium finish in this third moto, albeit not in the point standings overall. This would move him on to 42, and he would need for both Russell Kilby and David Lamb to drop out of the major point scoring positions, i.e. out of the top 10. And at the moment, Burton, Lamb and Kilby all look fairly settled in 5th, 6th and 7th positions, albeit with Andrew Luke in 8th position, running on the same pace as Russell Kilby up ahead of him, but Kilby dropping back from David Lamb. Feels bizarre to be talking about the riders in 5th, 6th and 7th positions in terms of their podium scoring overall, but that's as a result of what happened in the first Pro Moto, and with 3 of the main challengers for the podium positions ruled out with problems as the race went on, largely mechanical on this demanding Mildenhall circuit, as Dominic Foreman starts to gain a little bit on this lap by the looks of things on Frank van Homet up ahead of him. He gained 0.2 of a second on the previous lap. The gap still standing at 4 seconds though between 2nd and 3rd position, so Foreman's going to need to eat into it quite swiftly in the swiftly narrowing time limit in the remainder of this third Pro Moto. At the moment it looks as though Bradley Pocock is going to make it 3 wins out of 3 ahead of Van Homet, Foreman and Blackwell, with then a 16-second gap to the rest of the pack. So there's no doubt about who the fastest 4 riders are on the circuit, but those aren't going to be the 4 riders on the podium here today, because Frank van Homet, after 2 non-finishes, is only going to finish on 22, and Blaine Blackwell, if he stays where he is, will add to his tally, but it's not going to be enough to make an impression on the top 3 overall. Bradley Pocock working his way through the infield section. What a successful day this has been for him in Mildenhall. If things stay as they are, he'll leave round 7 with a 51-point advantage. Remember, he came into the first of the 3 Pro Motos 2 points in arrears. And unless we see Pocock retiring from some of the remaining rounds this season, I would expect that he will now march on towards the title. He's certainly got one hand on his trophy after round number 7. Frank van Homet, well, he's eased up the pace in the closing stages. A 1:54 on the previous lap. I suspect that he's just managing the gap now to the remainder of the riders in the top positions. Blaine Blackwell having dropped away from him. Dominic Foreman likewise. Jody Burton still in line for that 5th position ahead of David Lamb and Russell Kilby. And that will settle things in terms of the podium. It'll leave us with an unusual top 3, but nothing unusual about the race winner. Bradley Pocock makes it 3 wins out of 3 here in Mildenhall, as Frank van Homet works his way through towards the checkered flag. It'll be his first finish of the day. It'll be 22 crucial championship points on the board, but things are starting to look as though Pocock will seal the title in 2017, and it may well be between Frank van Homet and Blaine Blackwell over 2nd in the championship standings, which isn't what either of those 2 riders would have wanted. Dominic Foreman dropping down to 4th position, with Blaine Blackwell coming through for 3rd. And in terms of what that does in the overall, Pocock takes the 75 points, with Blaine Blackwell and Dominic Foreman both finishing on 40, but behind Jody Burton on 56 and David Lamb on 48, who ties it with Russell Kilby, but gets the 3rd step on the podium courtesy of Countback and his superior performance in that 3rd and final Pro Moto. And in terms of the championship, it's Bradley Pocock who arrives in Mildenhall 2 points in arrears and leaves round 7 with a 51-point advantage. Surely if reliability is on his side in the remainder of 2017, Pocock already has one hand on the trophy.